Hey, welcome to another episode of Spritz of Wisdom. Let's begin as we do every time with my sip of the week. These are my highs and lows of the previous week living here in South Italy. Starting with the highs, I am super happy to say that I have been able to get hold of some bureaucracy documents that I really genuinely believed would cause me a nightmare, because I have to renew my Carta di Soggiorno and I have an appointment for later in the year, but the organized version of me was like, we need to start collecting the documents they need from now so that we are ready. And these documents were essentially my historical residence certificates, and I've been able to get both of them from Palermo and Salerno via email without having to spend time going to the offices. You have to pay for both of them, of course, but I have my documents and they are good to go. And in case you're ever wondering, technically the historical residence certificates should last 6 months, but of course, because they are historical, in a way, they do kind of last forever because you can't go back and change the past. The current residence certificate is the one you have to get 3 months before, no earlier, because that only has a 3-month window. And I don't know, in a way, I kind of feel that because I've become so accustomed to things not operating the way that they should, and there have been unnecessary delays, it was just really unexpected that it would be like this. It wasn't completely smooth sailing, I'm going to be honest. One of the websites that I had to make the payment at crashed after I made the payment, and I didn't have the receipt that I needed to email back to the Comune to ask them for this certificate. But I sent a screenshot of the payment and that was sufficient because I received it this morning. So I'm super happy about that. Things do work here in a way, but I think after nearly 8 years, I'm always prepared for the worst. But then it's good because you're pleasantly surprised when things like this work out well. So what are the highs of the past week? This hopefully will be the last week where if you're watching me on video, you will see my camera microphone being used for my podcast, because I've received confirmation from the people that are servicing it that they are going to be dispatching a new one to me. It was supposed to be dispatched last week, but then they realized that I have a different model to what they have in stock. So they've told me I should get it hopefully later this week. So fingers crossed, next week it will be business as usual. Let's hope. Now, in terms of lows of the past week, it's been pretty cold. I know I'm always giving you weather updates on this podcast, but it has been pretty chilly at points. At one point last week, I felt like we'd reverted back to February because it was grey, it was cold, it was chilly. A lot of people I know have been sick recently because of the change in weather. You know, I told you we were experiencing spring just a few weeks ago, and then it's gone back to really cold temperatures. And now we're kind of in this in-between stage. But it's to be expected at this time of year. Absolutely. March is this crazy month where you can get like nice weather, terrible weather, and everything else in between. What are the lows of the past week? I think that's it. Actually, it's actually been a very good week, a very productive week. I feel like I got a lot done. I've started, as I've said, working towards my Carta di Soggiorno before I even really expected to, because I kept putting it off, really. I'm going to be honest, because just the thought of bureaucracy here drives me crazy. But, you know, all's well that ends well. It's actually been quite a smooth process, and they are the only external documents that I need to produce. Everything else I can easily manage myself. So I'm very happy about that. So let's talk about today's full pour episode, because I've been reflecting a lot. It is fast approaching our 1-year anniversary in our new home and kind of the new chapter of our life here in Italy. And I'll be doing a video all about this on YouTube because I feel like it deserves a bit of a deep dive reflection into some of the lessons that the past 12 months have really taught me. But it also got me thinking about how during my time here in Italy, there have been some things that I have nearly never done. And it's interesting to reflect back on that and to think about why I didn't nearly do them and what could have been the consequences if I hadn't. Because essentially, all of these things that I nearly never did have actually taken me into the next chapter of my life here at every single interval. And we're going to focus on 3 key things today, actually, in this podcast episode. Because if you are pondering about what to do in a particular situation, maybe you're considering a move to Italy or you're reflecting on what to do next in your life, I think you have to really pay attention to those doubts sometimes, because they can talk you out of doing something that could very well be the best thing for you. And it's super interesting because I feel like this conversation is coming around at the same time as, for example, members within my community, they are expressing like how they're feeling about upcoming moves to Italy and getting everything in order. And buoyed by that energy, I really felt like talking about this today because I think spring is a great, great season. And it's a great time to get started with things and to start doing things. But sometimes we talk ourselves out of them. And the first thing that I nearly never did living here in Italy was to start my YouTube channel. You know, this very podcast, my brand, my online community, my Instagram, like everything that I have created around like Ms. Britaly would never have existed had I not started my YouTube channel. And that's a crazy thing to think about. But I nearly never started my YouTube channel because I genuinely didn't think that people would be interested in anything that I had to say about life in Italy. I had a lot of insecurities at that point when I first moved here. And even though I'd had a friend tell me for a good few months prior to my move that I should start it back in 2018, you know, start documenting it, document everything, I didn't actually end up starting it until 2021. And it wasn't because I suddenly had this change of heart and realized that I should just do it. It was more so that I realized that I'd lost myself up until that point. My personality was kind of rebuilding itself and recovering because I absolutely lost my personality when I first moved here because I just couldn't express myself the way I could back home. Also, I was rediscovering my identity because I had moved here on the coattails of being an entrepreneur and I'd had that be such an integral part of my life for 4 years prior. I came here and was like, I don't really know what to do in my free time anymore. I don't really know what to be watching anymore because everything that I had consumed up until my move had always been around entrepreneurship and building a business and brand. And so I was really at that point where I was trying to rediscover who I was and I needed to create something that gave me the ability to feel like me again. And it was that very YouTube channel that did that for me, you know, and from there came the idea of Ms. Britaly and this concept and this world that I'm building around my brand. But it all started with me realizing that I shouldn't be listening to those doubts that are telling me that nobody's interested, but that I should actually lean into why I want to do this. And, you know, it was also during the pandemic time that I started this channel. So I needed to have an outlet to express how I was feeling about things to people that I thought would really be able to understand. And so that nearly never happened because I was talking myself out of it. And that would have been wild to think that I didn't create anything else on the back of it if I hadn't started that channel. The second thing that I nearly never did here in Italy was that I nearly never left the Montessori school in Napoli. Now, I've been doing this kind of YouTube short series called Lifting the Lid. If you've not seen it, I suggest you check it out. I'll pop a link up here to the playlist if you are watching this on YouTube. But essentially, I do different editions. So I did a work edition not so long ago where I was talking about my different experiences having worked here in Italy for nearly 8 years. And I was talking about my very first job, which was at a Montessori school in Napoli. And whilst that job was fantastic for the experience it gave me and for the connections that I made and just for integrating me into life here, there were many downsides to that role as well. But essentially, it was during the pandemic that everything kind of shifted for me. And I remember I'd reached a point where I'd had my contract renewed. It was renewed into an indeterminato contract, and it was for the role of a teacher, full-blown teacher, not the teaching assistant that it had been prior. But I was no longer that happy, but I felt nervous because, you know, I'd been told if you have this indeterminato work contract, it's the gold dust of contracts, you know, not everybody gets it. And I knew that not everybody at my school had this contract. So I felt this degree of responsibility. And then the pandemic obviously was upon us, and I started to feel quite insecure about like the way the school were managing that in terms of our payment as staff. And it just brought up a lot really, because my contract wasn't as accurate as it should have been. Yet that was the contract that told me how much I earned. And so there was just a lot that was coming up, and the pandemic really opened my eyes to it. And it was around that time that I actually received an email from a school that I'd also had an interview at when I first moved here, except I hadn't chosen that school at that time. I'd decided to go to the Montessori school, and they were asking if I was looking for a position because they needed teachers. That was really like, okay, this is a sign. This is somebody communicating for me from above to tell me that this is my moment and I've got to make the change. But I nearly never did because I got sucked up into this whole security blanket thing, which I think we can do sometimes. We think on paper it's better to stay in a secure position with a contract that's indeterminato, especially at a time when there's like global uncertainty. But in reality, that was never the best thing for me to do, because by changing my role, I actually gained a wider set of experience, because now I was no longer just teaching preschool children. I was actually teaching all ages, including adults. So it really strengthened my skills, but also I earned more money through that position than I did at the Montessori school. And it was a lot closer to home at that. In fact, I think I had like a 2-minute commute. So it was pretty funny how everything turned out, but that nearly never happened. So it's interesting how I can reflect on that and think, well, if I hadn't done that, I probably wouldn't end up working where I work now, having gained all the experience that I had behind me, you know? And then the third thing that I nearly never did, which in a way makes me feel sad to think that I actually thought like this, was that I nearly never started my online community, the Aperitivo Lounge. Now, if you follow me for some time, I was toying with the idea of opening a community called Expats in Bloom a couple of years ago. And then I kind of talked myself out of it because I didn't feel like it was ready. And then I fell out of love with the name because expat brings with it a lot of connotations. And I went through this stage of thinking that, do I know enough to have a community about life in Italy? Like, consider, I've been living here for nearly 8 years. I was actually doubting my own ability to open this community. I was looking at other people in a similar niche to me and thinking they know so much more than I do. Maybe I'm not the best person to do this. You know, maybe people are not going to enjoy what I create. And to think that I was actually thinking like this, but I guess the kind of light bulb moment for me was the latter part of last year when I was really like, okay, maybe I should just believe in myself a little bit more, because I was looking at other people within my niche who offer similar services for people that want to move here. And I was just thinking, would I use those services if I needed to? And the answer for me personally was no. Only because for me and the type of person that I am, I didn't connect with the messaging. I didn't connect necessarily with the person behind the brand. And so I thought, if I'm feeling like this, maybe other people are too, because, you know, we all connect with different people and gel with different characters. Not everybody is going to be for everyone, right? And because I'm quite a deep spiritual person, I look at things from different perspectives on a very holistic basis, rather than it just being like a tick box exercise, which a lot of people within my niche really do focus in on. I was like, I've got to do it. I've got to create it. And when I look now at what I've created and how it is growing in such a beautiful way, because people are having time to form connections with each other and get to know each other. And I'm seeing how there is this invisible thread that ties each and every one of my members together based on their shared interests or beliefs or where they plan to move to in Italy, whatever it may be. I'm really starting to see that I'm so glad. I believed in myself, because actually I knew more than I realized about life in Italy. Actually, people haven't joined my community for me to be like an Einstein. They've joined my community to learn about life in Italy from somebody who's walked that walk, to speak to other people who are going through the same thing, and also to have experts that are coming in, specialists in their field, sharing their advice and wisdom with people to help others. And so I just got it all twisted, and I nearly never started it. And it's just wild to think about that, because it's probably one of the things I'm most proud of this year, is that I actually launched that in January. And it's this, like, when I just think about those 3 things, and there were so many more things that I nearly never did in Italy, but they are 3 that really stick in my mind because all of them was so significant in their steps. It just made me think I want to do this entire episode, because I know I'm not the only person that goes through life and doubts themselves or doubts what they should do next. And I think especially when the world is the way that it is right now, I'm sure that you too are filled with doubts at times about whether or not, you know, if you're planning to move to Italy, it's the right thing to do, or if you're planning to make a career change or make some big change in your life, if now is really the best time to do it. But I guess for my chin chin this week, I want to say to you, really consider those doubts and try to understand if it's more of an insecurity-based doubt or if it's more of a legitimate doubt that is telling you that it's not the right moment. Because a lot of the things that we really want to do in life and that are meant to take us to the next level are going to feel uncomfortable. They're going to feel like maybe we are making the wrong decision, but actually it's what is needed to take us to the next step in our life. And I look at all of those significant things that I nearly never did, and I realized that they all took me to the next stage, but I nearly never did them. So I guess learn from me and believe in yourself more, because it's scary to make big changes. It's scary to do things when on paper you probably should be doing something completely different. But in reality, in the way that you feel about something and in kind of listening to your intuition, you know it's the right thing to do. It's scary to be like that, because if you speak to somebody who's quite pragmatic, they'll tell you that you're crazy. But actually, it's one of the most important things you could do. You know, I genuinely feel that my life in Italy has worked the way it has done because I've been so intuitive and because I have listened to myself a lot more than I ever thought possible. It's not to say I haven't doubted myself, because I've just given you 3 times when I nearly did. But essentially, I believed in myself in the end. And that's the key that I want you to take away from this, because belief in yourself is difficult sometimes, particularly if you have your own insecurities or you are just filled with doubt and uncertainty. But I really want you to trust in the process and trust that with the right mindset and the right knowledge about things that you want to do, that feeling of uncertainty will fade and will eventually help you to take big steps and make big changes that will radically improve your life. I will see you in the next episode.